Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Carrie McClellan. I'm the Outreach Manager for ElderHelp, and I help to coordinate the volunteers, but also our family caregiver webinars. And I'm really excited to introduce to you our speaker in just a couple of minutes. And before I do that, I'm just going to share a little bit about ElderHelp and who we are, so you have an understanding of that. So our organization is really focused on supporting older adults who are continuing to live in their own home in the community, who want to maintain their independence, but perhaps need additional assistance. And a lot of times that is with help from family members. So we often hear from family members who are looking for ways that they can support their loved ones as well. So we're often connecting them to different resources. So through ElderHelp, we have a set of our core services. We offer information and referral services, really connecting people to resources, whether it's through our programs, but also through the other community organizations that exist. We offer a variety of check-in calls. One is our Are You OK program, and that's designed for people who may not get many calls throughout the day, and that's an option for them to have that companionship, but also the safety net, so that we can check in, make sure that they're doing all right, and address any needs that might come up. We offer a transportation program that's called Seniors A Go-Go, and our care coordination program has social workers who are involved, as well as a variety of volunteer services to help those older adults continue living independently at home. We offer housing services through housing navigation, residential support, as well as a home share program, so roommate matching. And then our family caregiver support program is really available to help connect family caregivers at any stage of their journey with resources. So we do that through our information and referral service, also through webinars like this, where we offer a variety of topics. We're very fortunate to be partnering with Alzheimer's San Diego, so you'll often hear the Director of Education, Amy Abrams, and I'll introduce her in just a moment. She is also today's speaker. We have a set of online learning courses that we've developed through ElderHelp that are available for free, so you can access those at any time by going to our website, elderhelpofsandiego.org, and going to our family caregiver page, or directly by elderhelp.thinkific.com. And you just have to put in your name and email address to have access to all of those courses. And we also partner with Southern Caregiver Resource Center. So we're really wanting to make sure that we are collectively reaching more family caregivers who need support in our community. So it is always an honor and a privilege to introduce to you Amy Abrams, who is the Director of Education for Alzheimer's San Diego. And she'll be sharing about this important topic on communication skills with us in just a moment. But I'd like to do a proper introduction. So Amy has worked in the field of long-term care in San Diego for 20 years in care management, dementia care, and community health education. She holds a joint Master of Social Work and Master of Public Health from San Diego State University, and is a certified positive approach to care dementia trainer. Amy is a longtime member of the Aging Life Care Association and serves on the board of directors for the National Academy of Certified Care Managers. She is a passionate educator and vocal advocate for aging and disabled adults, and currently serves as the Director of Education for Alzheimer's San Diego, a local nonprofit organization whose mission is helping families today while finding a cure for tomorrow. And it's always a pleasure to introduce you, Amy, and to have you share your expertise and your wisdom with all of us. I know this topic comes up quite a bit through our clients and our families that we communicate with, and I can imagine it's the same for you. So I look forward to hearing more about that. And without further ado, I will give you the reins.
Okay.
Just for those of you, yes. And before I do that, I just wanted to mention that if you have a question, if you can use the raising of your hand feature and type it in, or use the chat function, we will see that, and we'll stop at a certain point and go through some of those questions. So if you have any questions and you want to enter them in ahead of time, please feel free to do that, and then we'll answer those in just a little bit. So hopefully that works. And let's see.
And Carrie will be keeping an eye on the time. I'll, of course, be trying to watch as well. But just to say, if there are a lot of you here, this is a big and complicated topic. And if there are questions we don't have an opportunity to get to here today, just please rest assured that we will make sure you know how to get a hold of us for some follow-up discussion if it's needed. So we will do our best. Thank you so much, Carrie. All of us at Alzheimer's San Diego are so grateful to all of you at ElderHelp, all the great work that you've been doing for decades here in San Diego County, and of course for our partnership. We really appreciate not only being able to do these programs together, but all of the different ways we collaborate in support of people living with dementia and their care partners out all over San Diego County and beyond, actually. So very grateful for that. So, okay, there you go. There's us. We'll move on to our agenda here today. I want to say clearly I am a dementia educator. I'm here to talk about communication skills specifically as they relate to communicating with and supporting a person who's living with memory loss. I'm with Alzheimer's San Diego. It's what I do. But I will also say that if you are caring for someone who does not have Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, either it's not been diagnosed and you just don't know what's going on, or they have other types of physical or cognitive disabilities, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about applies across the board. So I hope that you'll be able to pull out the bits that are useful to you. And that's another thing to note about this program. I am speaking to a broad array of folks out there. I know that you're in different stages of this journey, dealing with a wide range of challenges when it comes to communication. So everything that I'm talking about here today will certainly not apply to your specific situation, but I hope that you'll be able to pull out what's useful to you now, and also to remember that these resources are available to you down the road. I have provided Carrie with some handouts, a copy of these slides, as well as some supplemental a tip sheet, an information sheet with a lot of the communication strategies that I'm going to be talking about here today. So she can coordinate the distribution of those handouts, but please know that more information is available. If there's something I'm talking about today that you don't quite need right now, but you think about it a week or a month or 6 months or a year from now, remember that we're going to be here to help. So I'll start by talking briefly about dementia and its symptoms, specifically as they relate to a person's ability to communicate and to be communicated with. And then we're going to get into the bulk of our time will be spent on talking about strategies for setting yourself up for effective conversations or other types of communication with a person who's living with dementia. We will talk briefly about behavioral changes, personality changes, behavioral disturbance, or behavioral symptoms, as we prefer to say. We'll talk about them briefly because they are a form of communication, but that is sort of it's a whole other topic that I will be back soon to talk about. And then, of course, we'll make sure you know where to go for ongoing support. So very briefly, just to be sure we're all using the same terminology, thinking about the same thing when I'm using this expression, Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, what am I talking about? I am talking about dementia as a syndrome, not one specific illness or disease, but a cluster of symptoms. So we call that a syndrome. This group of symptoms, and you see them listed here: memory changes, language changes, difficulty with attention, focus, concentration, changes to the way a person solves problems or thinks about problems, of course, personality and behavior changes, as I've already mentioned, and importantly, changes to a person's visual spatial abilities. All of these are common categories of symptoms of various types of dementia. Those symptoms are caused by some underlying medical condition. Dementia is not itself the medical condition. It may be Alzheimer's disease, it may be a vascular cognitive impairment, It may be mild cognitive impairment. It may be frontotemporal dementia or Lewy body dementia. There are dozens, over 100 different identified medical conditions that cause this cluster of symptoms, this syndrome that we call dementia. So a person would be diagnosed with some type of dementia when they have impairment in one or more of these areas. So if it is just a memory problem, for example, I apologize, I've got a siren going by. I'll let that pass. Okay. If it is just a memory problem, for example, that's not to say that it's not a problem, nor that it won't interfere with your ability to communicate, because it will, but that does not sort of meet the criteria for diagnosis of some type of dementia. A person would be diagnosable with some form of dementia when they've got changes in 2 or more of those areas, and the changes are significant enough that they're interfering with daily life. So let me give a very brief walk through the various lobes of the brain, not for a biology lesson, but for the purposes of having some understanding and some compassion and some empathy in those moments of frustration when you're trying to communicate and it's not working. Something that I've learned over the years being a dementia educator is that it's really helpful to family members, caregivers, care partners, whatever the relationship, to be able to put the symptoms into some context. These are related to disease, what the person is doing, saying, how they're acting, the way that they're treating us, a lack of empathy, for example, a lack of understanding about what's going on in this situation. These are not things that the person is doing on purpose. And one of the great challenges in staying patient and staying present and staying empathetic with a person who's living with dementia is that they generally don't look all that different than they always did. Right? Sometimes, but not usually. We can't see these changes, but they are going on. And so we sort of get taken by surprise sometimes. We're having a conversation with someone who it can sometimes be easy for us to forget that they're living with this impairment. And then all of a sudden, something sort of comes out of nowhere. So Alzheimer's disease and most types of dementia begin in the temporal lobes. If you can see that graphic on the screen, it's that purple region, the middle regions of our brain. Our temporal lobes are primarily where the seat of our short-term memory and a lot of our language function is centered in our brain. Our brain, of course, all the different lobes work together in all of the various things that we are doing, all of our various functions. But the temporal lobe is primarily responsible for short-term memory storage, creation and storage, and a lot of our verbal language abilities. And because that is the part of the brain where Alzheimer's disease, the most common cause of dementia, that's where most Alzheimer's disease begins in the brain, where the first damage is seen. Most people with most forms of dementia have significant memory impairment and significant language impairment, Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia as well. The frontal lobe, this big region behind our foreheads, the yellow region on the graphic on the screen, is responsible for, it's kind of the CEO or the governor of our brain. It's responsible for a lot of our executive function, our ability to make decisions, to solve problems. This is where our behavior is kind of regulated. So all of us, with or without dementia, all of us throughout the course of a day, throughout the course of an hour, throughout the course of this time that we're in this webinar here together, we are going to experience a range of thoughts, feelings, emotions. We're not going to act on them. Right? I may have something running in the background of my mind, something that's going on in my life, right? That's making me feel very happy, very excited, or very sad, very somber. But for the most part, if I've got a healthy, functioning frontal lobe, oops, sorry about that. I will be able to kind of regulate those emotions and keep my behavior, my communication toward you fairly stable. Not always, but mostly. This is the part of our brain that's responsible for that. Importantly, this is also the part of our brain that provides us with the ability to have empathy for other people. And I'm talking here not only about emotional empathy, where I can understand what something feels like to you, even if I myself am not feeling it, I'm also talking about kind of perceptive empathy. So for example, I'm talking into this webcam right now. I don't see myself, I don't see any of you. But what I do have is perceptive empathy. I have a sense of what I look like to you, right? I have a sense that if I wave my hand right here, you're gonna see it, right? As we are talking, you and I having a conversation, if we're face to face, if I were to say something and I immediately see you react to it, you look shocked, you look angry, you laugh, whatever the thing might be, that's my empathy ability, my perceptive empathy saying, I made that happen. Right? This is one of our great challenges in communicating with someone who's living with brain changes related to dementia is often that empathy is changing, it's impaired for them. So if you suddenly feel angry, defensive, shocked, surprised, all of the various emotions you might have, in response to something that the person has said or done, they may or may not understand why you're acting that way. So if you've ever had a conversation with a person who's living with memory loss or cognitive impairment related to dementia, and you think, are we on the same planet? Right? Are we having the same conversation right now? This is why. This is related to changes not only in the frontal lobe, but also in the parietal lobe, which is the part of our brain, the sort of teal colored region on the graphic here. This is the part of our brain that does a lot of our processing of our sensory information. So what I'm seeing, hearing, smelling, feeling, right, sensing going on around me, your brain may be interpreting that very differently. And so when two people are having a communication, it often, we're used to being able to rely on both of us are seeing the same thing, hearing the same thing, feeling the same thing. It's hot in here, it's cold in here, for example. All those sensory processing abilities change in people who are living with dementia. So if anybody is caught in the eternal tug of war over the thermostat, this is a real common one for people living with dementia and their care partners. There's something to that, right? They perceive temperature differently than you do. They're not imagining it and you're not imagining it. It's a difference in sensory perception, and it's a huge barrier to effective communication. And then the back two regions of the brain, I'll be brief here, are occipital lobe and the cerebellum at the base of our brain. These are very involved in our vision. When there's damage in this region of the brain, we're going to see significant changes to a person's peripheral field of vision. It starts to narrow pretty significantly. And this contributes to people seeing situations very differently. If wherever you are right now, if you were sitting there wearing a set of goggles, right, a scuba mask, and you only could see the screen, you only could see the little bit of information, you're missing all the social context of everything else that's going on. And so your perception of that situation is going to be very different. People with dementia are living with differences in their visual spatial fields, and this impacts the way that they perceive their environment, the way they perceive what you are doing and how you're doing it. So, and then finally, when there's damage in the base of the brain, the cerebellum, the brainstem, we start to see more difficulty with fine motor skill, balance, and coordination, but those are areas that are less directly related to communication. So all of that, I go through that again, not to make biologists out of any of us, only to say these changes that you're perceiving, you're not imagining them. They come from somewhere, right? They are symptoms of a progressive disease, a progressive set of changes that are happening in that person's brain, regardless of what type of dementia it is. And so these changes are not something that the person is doing on purpose, and they're not something that they have control over. As much as I know it feels like that at times, they're not usually doing any of these things just for the purpose of pushing your buttons, being mean, being manipulative. We'll come back to that one in a moment. It's often just simply, these are related to changes going on in those various lobes of their brain. So what we might see is someone having a hard time finding the right words when they're speaking or understanding words as you are speaking them. Difficulty filtering out background noise, right? My ability to keep talking while I had a siren going by just outside my window here, right? Not a super strong ability on my part. Some people can keep doing that and not lose any focus or concentration. I can't. People with dementia have a much harder time filtering out noise, clutter, distraction, visual distraction, a lot of movement going on in a room, as well as sounds. So when I say background noise, I'm not just talking about things that they're hearing, also things they're seeing and sensing around them. If you are a care partner to somebody who speaks more than one language, do know that primary language tends to remain stronger as the disease progresses. So languages that they learned later in life do tend to decline more rapidly. So we'll see people sort of switching back and forth between primary and other languages, and that's not on purpose. This is another one of those things care partners often think the person is doing just to be difficult. It's not usually on purpose. A great challenge to you if you don't speak their primary language. So finding some help, having other sources of support who do speak their native language can be very helpful to you. Repetition, very, very common symptom in all stages of these diseases. A person who makes repetitive statements, sometimes repetitive movements as well, but we're talking communication here. Most often though, it's the repetition of questions. What time are we going? What time is such and such happening? A lot of questions about who's going to be there. What did you say about this or that? Asking the same question over and over again. Remember, there's damage in that temporal lobe. There's damage in that region of the brain that's responsible for short-term memory creation. When a person is asking you a question for the 5th or 6th time, it doesn't mean they weren't listening to the answer. It usually means, or that they weren't paying attention to your answer. Sometimes we think that, right? It usually means that they actually don't remember having asked that question. Their memory of that conversation is gone. So, and then finally, a very common symptom is frustration when communication isn't working. If you and I are having a verbal conversation together, and again, if I'm not living with dementia and I say something and it doesn't make sense, how am I going to know? I'm going to see it on your face, or you might say, "What? Amy, that didn't make any sense. Can you try that again? Can you explain it?" Right? Because I have empathy, right, and because I have access to my whole range of vocabulary. Right? I can come up with a different way to say what it was that I was trying to say or ask the question I was trying to ask. If I'm living with dementia and those things are impaired, what I might say is, well, why aren't you paying attention? You never listened to me, right? I was being perfectly clear. I may withdraw. I don't know any other. I can't draw from any other sources to try to come up with a different way to say this. I don't have access to those tools. And so I'm going to get frustrated and either shut down, walk away, get angry, start arguing with you, turn it on you, right? Any number of things. Some of this probably sounds familiar to some of you. So again, I implore you to remember that these are symptoms of a progressive disease, not something that the person is doing on purpose. Behavioral expression is a form of communication. And again, I'll be brief on this topic because it is its own very deep and complex topic, but behavior is a form of communication, so it's important that we talk about it. What do I mean by behavior? It's sort of this blanket term that we use to describe an out of character response. It's not always negative, but of course, people don't generally seek support for, help with positive behaviors. It's the challenging ones, the difficult ones that we need to know what to do with. Behavior, like all of these other changes I've been describing, it's a symptom of the person's disease, and it is usually the way that the person is expressing some type of an unmet need. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be something in their environment. They might have something medical going on with them, but behavior does not come out of nowhere, as much as it might look like it. If we know the person, if we're familiar with their environment and their sort of common triggers, we can often figure out what was behind it. So just as an example, this is what I'm talking about, these various types of behavioral expressions that you see on screen here. Restlessness, anxiety, repetition, again, movements or statements, shadowing, meaning just really needing to be right next to the primary caregiver all the time and really worrying if they're not right within sight. Depressive symptoms, sadness, tearfulness, being socially withdrawn, becoming aggressive or paranoid, suspicious behavior, very common. Remember, when all those changes are happening in the lobes of the brain, the person is perceiving what's happening in their environment differently. So if stuff is disappearing because they're hiding it, right, that's not how they're remembering or perceiving this situation. In their mind, someone's taking things, right? Lots of paranoid and suspicious behavior is just rooted in confusion and disorientation. Wandering, a very high risk behavior in people who are living with dementia. Disinhibition can mean any number of things, saying and doing things that are sort of socially inappropriate. That's what we mean by disinhibition. Refusing assistance from a caregiver, physical assistance, or even just sort of kindness, right? Offering a hand when we're walking up and down a step, or assistance with medications or bathing, or other types of practical help. Sleep disturbance, unfortunately, very common, related to those brain changes directly. And sundowning is a term we use to describe a common phenomenon in many people living with dementia, where these types of behavioral expressions, more confusion, more disorientation, these types of expressions get more severe in the late afternoon and early evening hours of the day. We think that's related to changes in the light of the day, fatigue, hunger, hormonal changes, right? Lots of causes that might be behind that. So all of that is to say, behavior is a form of communication, and we have to understand it as such. One very important factor in understanding how best to communicate with one individual person, because right, you're here thinking probably today about how you communicate with one specific individual. One thing that's very helpful to understand about them is how much do they understand about what's going on with them. This information that you see on the screen here comes to us from an occupational therapist named Teepa Snow, who developed a method called the Positive Approach to Care, and I provided her website there if you want to learn more about that. One very important thing to know about people who are living with dementia is that many of them, at least half, if not more, at some point, especially in the early stages of the disease, have a condition that we call anosognosia, from the ancient Greek for without disease knowledge. This is a deficit of self-awareness, not remembering that I don't remember things, right? Not recognizing that the problems I'm experiencing in my life, communicating with you, functioning normally, being able to do the things I used to be able to do, my ability to drive, for example, not being able to recognize that those are all related to a decline in my own skills, my own ability. We often assume that people who are living with dementia are hiding things, covering up, or the big one I hear all the time is that, my loved one is in denial. Right? That is not actually usually the case. In most instances, it's not denial, it's that the person really truly cannot see their own deficits. Right? I hope that this is helpful for you. For me, this was a real light bulb moment in coming to understand how I'm used to interacting with and understanding people who are living with memory loss and confusion. So about half of people in early stage dementia have this condition wherein they don't know that anything is going on with them. About 20% are aware. I do know I'm losing my memory or my various abilities, and I'm mad about it. And so my response to that might be to be very controlling. Right? If you would stay out of my business, stop touching my things, then I'd be able to better keep track of them. Right? That's an example of what we mean by a person who's aware and controlling. And then the other third or so are people who are aware that things are changing with them, and they feel very anxious about it. These are the folks who really need a lot of reassurance. They're asking lots and lots of questions and feel very nervous when their caregivers are out of sight. So understanding where the person is on that pie, and do recognize people can change over time. They might not necessarily sit in one piece of that pie forever, but knowing where they are right now is very helpful as you are working on your own communication skills with that person. So if you're communicating with somebody who falls into that category of not aware, anosognosia, not aware that they're losing their abilities. Your goal in communicating with them is to change their attitude toward the thing that you're talking about, rather than trying to convince someone, for example, that they need to stop driving because the doctor told them they have to stop driving, or because they've had their driving privileges revoked, if it's actually been made official. You're not going to be successful with a person who doesn't remember that that diagnosis ever happened, who isn't aware that their abilities are impaired, right? That never happened. I don't know why you're saying that to me. So our goal is to change their attitude about the fact that someone else is doing the driving now, right? It's a difference. It's a subtle difference, but it's a really important one. We want to avoid arguing with them, avoid drawing attention to their deficits because they do not see them. Would be a little bit like, I like to draw the comparison in the way people who do not have color blindness, the way people perceive color, right? You might see that wall behind me and think that it looks green. I think that it looks orange. You and I could fight all day long about what that color is, who's gonna win, right? We see what we see. Right? So I really encourage you to let go of trying to challenge a person, to convince them, to make a strong enough argument that they're going to be able to see what's going on here. It's often not effective. It's not a good use of your energy. What we need to do instead is change their attitude about the fact that somebody else is doing the driving now, right? Instead of trying to convince them that they can't do the driving. For people who are aware of their deficits and feel that sort of anger and control, our goal is just to not be alienated, to stay connected to them. So working with kindness, empathy, trying not to point out what they're doing wrong, trying not to fix it, at least not directly in front of them, right? These are the folks we have to kind of go around the back door and do things to support them and help them without knowing that we're doing them. And then finally, for people who are aware of their skill changes, of their changing communication skills, for example, or other types of abilities, our goal is just to provide lots of reassurance. We are a team. Don't worry about me. I'm doing fine, right? I'm not going to leave you. This is often what people need to hear. Being gentle, keeping the person's sense of what's important, who they are, what's valuable, what makes them feel a sense of meaning, keeping all of that in mind, really focusing on what they can do. This is an important sort of pause that we all need to take and just sort of acknowledge things are changing. This is something that we need to acknowledge and sort of grieve. Whatever the nature of your relationship with this person is or was, it is changing. That's an inevitable consequence of the progression of dementia symptoms, the damage in the brain and the progression of the symptoms. They cannot change what is happening in their brain. We are the ones who have to change. We have to adapt. We have to change the way we respond. We're used to kind of reacting to people. We need to change the way we do that, change our own responses. I also encourage you to keep in mind you're changing too. Right? Being a care partner to somebody who's living with a progressive illness of any kind, but especially something like dementia, which really keeps you on your toes and is exhausting, that's changing you as well, right? So just recognize you're both changing and your relationship is changing in some ways for the worse, yes, but it can be also in some ways for the better. So I've spent a lot of time here talking about all the different things that have changed in them, in you, in their abilities, in the way that you communicate. But I also encourage you to take a moment and reflect, just think for a quiet moment here about the person that you care for and think about what hasn't changed about them. What do they care about now that they've always cared about? What do they like to do? What do they enjoy? What do they derive meaning and pleasure from now that they've always derived meaning and pleasure from? Are there aspects of your relationship, your ability to enjoy jokes or funny movies together, to listen to a piece of music that they enjoy? Are there things about them that have not changed? There are. I know that there are. At every stage of the disease, it can be hard to dig them up, especially when you're tired and you're angry and you're frustrated, but they're there. So I encourage you to think about who they are in their core and what has not changed about them. And we'll come back to that when we're getting into some of the techniques. I'll encourage you to think back to these things about them. So let's get into some of the techniques themselves. Before I do that, just a quick reminder, you already have all the skills I'm going to talk about. You already know how to do all of this. This comes very naturally to most human beings. Communication is far more than just the language that we're using. Even here in Zoom, right? This feels, or we're not in Zoom, whatever platform we're on right now, GoToWebinar. Here in video conferencing, right? I'm mostly, of course, relying on my words to communicate with you, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. I'm not looking at it, but I know there's a chat somewhere that's happening. You're chatting with Carrie, who's moderating this meeting. You're seeing my face, you're seeing my facial expressions, right? Sometimes I use my hands a lot, right? There's a lot that I'm doing that's communicating with you, aside from just saying words to you. And this is good for us to be reminded of. There's a lot more going on in our communications, and we can rely on these. We can understand them about other people, and we can also use them as communication tools. Our tone, our facial expression, our posture, our body language, the way that we're moving, right? If I'm talking to you and I've got my arms sort of folded and I'm kind of hunched up and scowling, right? I'm sending you a very different message about how I feel about this conversation than if I'm sitting in sort of an open, I'm leaning in, I'm nodding, I'm making good eye contact with you. I'm sending you an entirely different communication, even though I could be saying the exact same words. We all know how to do these things already, the way we physically interact with each other, the way we touch or don't touch. And of course, as I've been talking about, our behavior often speaks volume. So you know how to do these things. What can be really helpful is to spend a little extra time when a person has cognitive impairment related to a progressive type of dementia. Actually, I mean, a lot of this is really, again, useful to people, even people who don't have dementia. Spend a little time up front preparing for this communication. Set yourself up for success. Get into a position where you're going to be able to have good eye contact. We're on the same level. If they're seated, try to pull up a chair and be seated next to them rather than standing up over them, looking down on them when you're having that communication. If this is a person who experiences disorientation, and remember, these symptoms can be new and sort of emerge unexpectedly at any time, so you never know. But if it's possible, they might not know who you are. And remember how frequently that happens with people who are living with dementia. Offer an introduction. Hey, Mom, it's me, your favorite daughter, Amy. Right? Or you might want to be more neutral, your youngest daughter, right? Something like that. Offer an introduction, give your name, talk about what your relationship is to that person and what you're doing there. I'm here we're getting ready to go out to lunch, right? Don't assume that they know who you are, where you are in time or space, for example, or what you're doing there, what the purpose of this visit or this interaction is. Pay attention to your tone and your volume. You want to be close enough, clear enough that they can understand you. But as with many people with other types of disabilities as well, there's frequently an impulse to kind of yell at people who are living with dementia. Talking really loudly does not help them understand any better, right? So pay attention to be loud enough and clear enough that they can hear you, but appropriate to the space, how close you are, and to the type of interaction that you're having. Slow down, give lots of time. Your speech needs to slow down because they need more time to understand, but you also need time for them to process what they're hearing, to respond to you. Every interaction, whether it's a communication or you're getting something done, you're going somewhere, you're doing something around the house, everything just takes about 3 times as long as you think it should. That's just the way it goes. And then back to that point I made before about what hasn't changed about the person. Think about some other ways that you might be able to connect and communicate with them through the senses. If you're having an interaction and language is getting challenging, could you connect over a photo album? A scent, a flower that looks or smells really nice, a movie, a song, taking a walk together, right? Finding some other way if verbal communication is just not working in this moment. So a few techniques to review here. Keeping your speech as clear, as sort of short and concise of sentences or sentence fragments as you can is really helpful. This is not normally how we communicate. If you were to look at a transcript of everything I've said so far in this webinar, it would be a mess, right? Many of my sentences are run-ons, lots of different topics of information being covered in a short amount of time. I stop, I pause, I switch gears, I talk about something else for a moment, and then I come back to that topic. These are very normal ways that all of us communicate, and don't beat yourself up for doing this. This is how we all communicate. But it's very difficult for a person with dementia to track a conversation like that. If you're having a conversation about what to eat for breakfast, have a conversation about what to eat for breakfast. Don't also talk about what they're going to wear that day, what's on the schedule for the day, right? Keep it focused. Simplifying as best you can. If you're giving instructions, be very clear, be very brief in the instructions, and give one step at a time, if at all possible, not always possible. Limiting choices, very helpful. Remember, if you're back to that topic of choosing what's for breakfast, right? You may want to say, well, we've got supplies for eggs or waffles. Which would you prefer? Instead of what do you want for breakfast, right? Giving them, putting part of the answer in the question, right, is very helpful. Limiting their choices is an act of real kindness to a person who's living with cognitive impairment. Repeating yourself is very helpful, but this is challenging. This takes some practice because what you want to try to do is repeat yourself exactly the same way. Would you like eggs or waffles for breakfast? If you don't get an answer to that, if you don't get a reply, your natural impulse is to add more information, to say it a little bit differently. We all do this. It's a totally normal way to communicate, right? Mom, I need to know what to make for breakfast. Should I get out the stuff for eggs or would you prefer to have waffles? Right? That, to a person who's got cognitive impairment, sounds like an entirely different question, right? Whereas if I just repeated myself, would you like eggs or would you like waffles? Say it exactly the same way, pausing, repeating yourself, and challenging yourself not to sound annoyed the third or fourth time you say it, right? This is very helpful in terms of facilitating their understanding. You're giving them time, you're giving their brain sort of more ability to process what has been said or asked, and you're not communicating your own impatience. When we're repeating ourselves, we tend to kind of slip into baby talk. It's again kind of a natural impulse or instinct, but something we really want to keep in check. Avoiding changing your tone of voice to make it sound like you're talking to a child, or engaging in what's sometimes referred to as elder speak, calling somebody honey, sweetie, dear, if that's not a normal term of endearment, right? If it is, then sure, of course, use it. But if this is not somebody who's your honey or your sweetie, and that's not something you've usually called them, sort of slipping into those language patterns can be very distressing to a person because it feels sort of undignified. Right? Addressing the person as though they are a child or diminutive in some way. And be very clear about talking to the person directly. If you're having a communication with the person who's living with dementia, have the communication with them. You may need to also be on the sly, also having a conversation with that other person in the room, right? We do this at doctor's appointments. We do this in family visits. While I'm looking at you, I am subtly communicating this information to the person over here, right? But communicating directly with the person who's living with dementia, never assuming that they don't hear us or that they don't understand us, because that is a surefire way to trigger agitation in people who are living with dementia. If I can get my slide to advance here. Okay. So those are the do's. Here's the don'ts. Try not to argue, correct. Remember our fight about the color of the wall behind me, right? This is not a good use of anybody's energy. Try not to remind the person that they've forgotten something. We just talked about this. I just reminded you that we're going to be leaving at 11 o'clock. Weren't you paying attention, right? Again, very normal ways of communicating with each other when neither party has dementia, but not effective with somebody who's got memory loss or confusion. Don't question their memory. Don't quiz their, what time did I say I was going to come tomorrow, right? Questioning and quizzing, again, not effective. It would be a little bit like challenging a person with visual impairment to see something, right? It's not kind and it's not fair. You're setting them up for frustration and failure. Perhaps the hardest of all of these, and I do understand it, is not to take this stuff personally. I know if this is your spouse, your partner, your parent, sibling, somebody you've known and loved for many, many years, maybe all your life, depending on your relationship with them. Being accused of something, being the target of sort of mean or nasty behavior, it's really, really hard in that moment not to take it personally. This is why I give you that tour of the brain at the beginning of this program. Remember what's going on with them, right? What they're saying, what they're doing right now is not a reflection of how they really feel about you, right? There are billions of brain cells in there, neurons synapsing in all sorts of unpredictable ways. And there is not some underlying truth here that if they're being ugly with you, if they're saying things that are unfair or unkind, that it is some kind of a reflection of how they really feel about you. This is just not the way that it works, right? So do your best to take a deep breath and try to respond in a way that's helpful rather than react. Much easier for me to sit here and say than it is to do. I understand that, but a deep breath, pausing for about the time it takes to take about 3 deep breaths, does give you time to kind of think this through. Okay, the way I was just about to respond here or to react to that is probably not going to be helpful. What could I do instead? Try not to take these things personally. When you're communicating, try to frame your requests, your statements in positive ways. Instead of telling someone not to do something, tell them what it is that you want them to do. This is easier said than done. I challenge you to try to kind of track and listen to yourself for a day or two. If you live with another person in particular, listen to how you talk to them. This is something we really do a lot of. Please don't do that. Please don't leave the kitchen drawers open, right? Something that gets said a lot in my house. What I might say instead, please close the kitchen drawers, right? I'm saying what it is that I want the person to do instead of emphasizing what I don't want them to do. As best you can, maintain a spirit of generosity, forgiveness, remembering that these are symptoms of a disease. This is not something the person is doing on purpose. And a hard one, but a good one. Remember that kindness is often more important than honesty, right? Giving an apology when no apology is needed. I didn't do anything wrong here, but saying, I'm really sorry about that, right? I wish I hadn't said it that way, right? Instead of the defensive, well, I'm sorry you took it that way, right? Saying that you're sorry is a really powerful way of kind of validating a person's feelings, validating their experiences. Remember that they may not need in this moment a reminder when they're asking about a family member who died many years ago. Where's my dad, right? When's he going to be home? In that moment, your reaction, and a natural one may be to try to reorient them. Remember, he died 10 years ago. Right? Kindness is probably more important in that moment than being honest with them, right? And I'll give you some examples of how we can try to redirect a conversation instead of answering it directly. What it always comes down to is responding to what the person is expressing, the feeling behind what they're saying, and not reacting to the words that they're saying. So focus on the feelings, not the facts. So here's that all-important concept that is the foundation of all of these communication skills. That is validation. Recognizing or affirming that whatever the person is communicating, the feeling behind what they're saying, that's valid. Whether the facts of that situation are accurate or not, what they are communicating to you is a valid, worthwhile emotion, right? All feelings are valid, right? So we do this by agreeing with people. Again, apologizing is a very powerful way to agree with someone. Providing reassurance, I'm so sorry that happened. Expressing your understanding, and again, you taking on the role of offering empathy. I can see why you feel that way, even if you can't see why they feel that way, right? This is a very powerful way to connect with someone. So let me give you an example of this. You've been preparing a lunch for a person. You've made their favorite chicken salad that they've always loved. You set it down in front of them and they say, I don't want to eat this. I hate chicken, right? Maybe they're insulting your cooking or saying they don't like chicken, right? This would be a very normal reaction. But you said you like chicken, or I know you love this recipe. We just had this last week and you ate it all up. Nope, I am not making something else. Right? Your goal in this interaction is to try to get them to eat that chicken. This is not going to do it, right? Remember, what's going on in their brain changes. What's going on in their perception of this environment. If they look at that, what are they seeing and what are they thinking and remembering about it? It may be totally off from your history, your understanding of how they would normally perceive that meal that you've just put down in front of them, right? So what might be helpful instead? Oh, I totally forgot that you don't like chicken. This is not true. This is one of those instances where kindness is better than being honest with the person. I'm so sorry. I totally spaced it. I forgot. I was rushing through this and it slipped my mind. Let me go see what else we have, right? You go back into the kitchen, distract them for a few minutes, and maybe try it again. Present it a little bit differently. Put it on a slice of lettuce instead of on a piece of bread, right? See whatever might help. Instead of getting into the fight about the fact that you do like chicken. This is not going to be an effective strategy. You show up at the person's house ready to take them to the doctor's appointment. You've called, it's on their calendar. In fact, you just called them an hour ago to tell them you were on your way over, right? And you arrive and they say, you didn't tell me about this. I'm not going. I don't need to see the doctor. I just went. I'm not going, right? Your reaction, again, it's right here. You can see it on your calendar. Here's my cell phone log. I can prove that I just called you 10 minutes ago to tell you I was coming, right? You see this doctor every 3 months, right? You can fight. This is not going to be an effective strategy. Again, go back to the emotion. You showed up at their door. What was it that they were actually saying to you? Not the words that they said, you didn't tell me about this doctor's appointment. What emotion were they expressing? I want to be in more control over my own time, my own life, my schedule. That's the emotion that they're expressing. So try to respond to that. Oh my, did I forget to tell you about this appointment? I'm really sorry about that. But you know what? It's really quick. We've got plenty of time, right? Maybe what they're reacting to is your sense of hurry and feeling rushed. Wouldn't be uncommon for most caregivers, right? Think about what they're reacting to and try to respond to that emotion rather than getting caught up in the facts of the situation. This does not come naturally. This does take practice, but it absolutely can be learned. I see so many family caregivers really learn how to really successfully kind of pivot and listen, watch and listen, feel for what the person is expressing rather than just reacting to the words that they have said. So what it all comes down to, anybody who enjoys improvisational theater, has ever taken an improv class or watched it, what you know that the foundational premise is yes and, right? Yes, I agree with you. And now I'm going to add something to it. This is a very effective strategy in learning how to communicate effectively with a person who's got memory loss and disorientation related to dementia. What it always comes down to is trying to say yes in various ways and trying to say less no. Sorry, my graphic got a little fun, our formatting got a little funny here, but it's supposed to say more yes and less no, right? Giving more positive validation, affirmation, and reassurance to the person. So Carrie, are there any questions that I can pause and take at this time before we move on?
Sure, let me see. I know we had some comments earlier that it was so helpful,
Great.
and really appreciated the information. Okay, the first question that I have, is there a normal progression of awareness or is it random?
Oh, back to the anosognosia. I think that's probably what this person is
Yes.
asking about. No, it does. It actually not really. Most people sort of early on in the disease process are going to be one of those three things. And as the disease progresses, nearly everybody, just simply because of the nature of the progressive physical changes that happen in the brain, the structural changes and the chemical changes, most people eventually shift to a place where they have no awareness of the fact that anything has changed with them, that they are living with dementia. They just generally lose that awareness. So people usually kind of start in one place. They may move around. There's no real pattern to that. But then most people will shift as the disease progresses into a lack of awareness.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question, so I'll read it to you. It's about what you were just referring to, and this person says, this is happening to me right now. My mom is asking me every day about my dad who died 11 years ago. I tell her that he is away in a trip to Europe. Then she says she wants to talk to him on the phone. I distract her, but she keeps coming back to this. I guess she misses my dad a lot. What can I do?
Yeah, let me go back to,
Yeah.
I'm going to try to see if I can get this slide to go backward. Can I go backward?
Yeah, let me stop. Okay, now you should be able to.
Oh, I see. Sorry, because you're, yeah. Sorry, just take me a second. That's the screen I wanted to have up while I try to answer this tricky question. This is such a common challenge, and it's so hard to navigate. Especially, I want to just acknowledge when she's talking about missing her. You know, where is my spouse who has died? I'm guessing based on your description of that interaction, that was your dad, or, you know, you have a relationship to that person too. So you have a grief reaction, you have some kind of emotional reaction, and that interferes with your ability to be thoughtful in your response as well. I think that's something we really have to give ourselves a break on as caregivers, and just remember we have our own, you know, our own amygdala, this little region in the back of our brain that fires off and makes us say things defensively, quickly, reactively. That region in our brain is healthy and working just fine, and it interferes with our ability to say something that's going to be helpful in that situation. So this is where, again, I come back to the value of taking a few deep breaths. It kind of gives the smarter part of your brain a moment to kick in and say, okay, don't try to convince her that he's just away, or that remind her that he has died. That's not going to be helpful in this situation. What I would say, and every person's specific circumstances are different, so forgive me if this won't work in your particular situation, but my general idea is to connect to, why is she saying that? Does she miss him? She feels like she hasn't seen him in a long time. She's feeling fondly toward him. She wants to tell him that she loves him, right? What might be behind why she's asking about this, right? It's usually not just general curiosity. Sometimes it's purely just being disoriented, but usually it's, gosh, I feel like I haven't seen my life partner in a long time and I miss him. So instead of trying to come up with something that's going to just distract her, ultimately, of course, that's your goal, is distraction, redirection to a new topic. But first try validating the feeling. I really miss him too. It's been a long time. We haven't seen him in a long time, right? Saying something like that, that's not really arguing with the person. You're not challenging the facts of the situation. She hasn't seen him in a long time, right? But you are saying, I see that you miss him, finding some way to communicate that. Right? Maybe, I think sometimes people are very afraid to engage in a conversation about the person because we're afraid it's going to bring up too much in the way of feelings, emotions. That's not usually the case. Maybe we could walk out to the garden that he created, that he really, you know, loved to work in, and reminisce about him a little bit. Look at pictures, right? Maybe if the form of redirection and distraction is not just about, hey, what's that shiny object out there? Or let's turn on a movie or listen to a song. but it has to do with that person that she's asking about, then you're actually providing some reassurance. This is validation in action. You miss him. I see that, right? And I miss him too. That feeling is valid. It's been a long time since you've seen him. So let's talk about him. Let's reminisce about him for a little bit. That might actually help you be more effective in sort of changing the direction of the conversation.
Thank you. That was a great perspective there. Another really good question just came in too. So what would you recommend this person say if their family member is hallucinating and seeing people who aren't there? Do you agree that they're there or came by or not?
This is such a hard one. Hallucinations are honestly kind of the exception to validation because you can't, when the person is asking about, what time is that person stole my purse, right? You can connect to that feeling of, it's hard when you lose your things and you feel like you're losing control of things, right? You can connect to that because you understand it. A person is seeing and hearing something that you cannot see or hear, a true hallucination, right? Not a delusion, but a true visual or auditory or olfactory hallucination. You don't have anything to work with, right? So what I would suggest is asking them some questions about what they're seeing. What you want to try to understand is, are they scared of it? Are they curious about it? They feel okay about it. Sometimes people are seeing and hearing things that don't scare them. It's just sort of confusing or puzzling, or it's entertaining to them, right? Oh, it's so good to see that person again. Or what is that person over there doing? This is hallucinations, by the way, are really common in some types of dementia, especially in Lewy body dementia. And it is, again, with fighting over the colors, right? It is not helpful to try to convince the person that they don't see it, right? I think I'm holding a pen right now. You could fight with me all day long about whether or not I'm holding a pen. I know I'm holding a pen. That person sees that person or smells that smell or hears that sound, and you can't convince them otherwise. But what you can do is engage them in some conversation about what's happening, right? To help you understand. This will help you come up with a creative way to respond to it. If it's something that they're afraid of, it's something that's causing them fear or anxiety, then you want to try to get them away, right? Try to make them, yes, I see that too. Here, let's go into the next room. Or, they are hearing something in the next room that you don't hear. You know what? Stay right here. I'll go in and I'll take care of it. Right? Whatever the thing might be. But you have to ask some questions in order to know how to come up with that kind of creative response. If it's something that's not necessarily bothering them, don't worry about it. It's a person or a thing that they think is happening, right? Play along with it as best you can. If it is causing them anxiety, agitation, then you do want to try to address it in some way. The goal, though, is just not to engage in fake battle with an intruder, right? That's not going to be effective. You don't know what they're seeing and you can't really do that. But getting them to go maybe into another area of the house and then reassure them that you've taken care of it, right? Whatever that thing might be. A really difficult challenge.
Great suggestions. I don't see any other questions right now, so we can proceed.
Great. Well, then I will, sorry, I'll just advance real quick here if I can to the end, back through the end of the program here. Okay. So it would be hard for me to overstate how important it is for you to take care of yourself. And I'm not talking, I do happen to be a social worker. That is true, but I'm not just talking sort of warm, fuzzy social worker stuff here. All of these things that I'm talking about, all those examples that we just went through, right? Those take brain power, those take energy for you to have the ability to quickly sort of pivot on a dime and think, okay, what's going to be helpful here? They're having a hallucination. They think that their spouse is just at work and they're going to come home. So what do I need to do in this moment that's going to provide reassurance? How do I redirect them? In order to have the sort of mental bandwidth to think about those things and be able to pull them off, you have to have some internal resources, right? You've probably all heard that expression that you can't pour from an empty cup. It's really true. So if you are in a position where you can't remember the last time you sat down and had a good meal, are you able to pay attention to your own nutrition, hydration? Are you getting a little bit of physical activity or movement? And it's important every day, not just 2 or 3 times a week. A 10-minute walk, able to get out into the sunshine. How's your stress? How's your blood pressure? How are you sleeping? Right? If you're not able to engage socially, engage in the activities that are important to you, learn, watch the programs that you enjoy, get to the places you like to visit. If you can't remember the last time you went to the dentist, right, because you're pouring everything you have into that other person, then you don't have a whole lot to give. And so the sort of core, the foundational, the most important thing to start with is building your own foundation, making sure that you're taking good enough care of yourself to keep that cup full, so that you have something to give to that person. So self-care is important. This is not fluffy, new agey stuff. I love this mental health blogger's take on what self-care means. It's giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. Super important for anyone who's taking care of somebody with a progressive condition like Alzheimer's disease or any other form of dementia. You got to have something in the tank, something left in the cup there. So at Alzheimer's San Diego, we are a provider of a variety of all free support and services for directly to the person who's living with dementia, but also to care partners. So if you or someone that you know is impacted by any of these conditions, all of our services are free. There's not like complicated intake processes. Just give us a call. You can talk with one of our dementia experts Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. They're there to answer questions, provide emotional support, or connect you to resources. Our partners like ElderHelp, the Southern Caregiver Resource Center, many other terrific organizations here in San Diego County who are here to support people impacted by these diseases, as well as, of course, letting you know about our programs and services. We've got support groups, lots of educational programming. We have volunteers that provide respite visits. We have volunteers that provide daily check-in calls for people with memory impairment who live alone. Access or connection to counseling resources, social activities and outings to address some of that social isolation. Lots of support is out there and available. So I know that number is a little small on your screen there, but 858-492-4400 is our phone number, and our website is alzsd.org, alzsd.org. Information about all of these programs and services is there, as well as a library of webinars, videos, informational sheets, a whole host of information about dementia and dementia caregiving. So I will wrap it up there. I think that's the end, unless there's any other questions or anything else you wanted to talk about here today, Carrie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy. We really appreciate your time, and I always learn something new from you, but I think that it was really helpful for people who are in attendance. And I will also share Alzheimer's San Diego's information in the follow-up email. So if you didn't get a chance to write it down, I will include that so that you can access those resources. And they're a wonderful organization, and we're so fortunate to have them supporting individuals and families. I'm gonna just look at the questions real quick, and
Sure.
It looks like we do have another question. So when the person asks the same question over and over again, and the care partner gets tired of it, what do you recommend?
Ooh, this is why you need a break. This is, I bet you this is the #1 reason people come to my classes at Alzheimer's San Diego. It's like, how do I get them to stop doing that? And unfortunately, there's no magic to getting them to stop doing it. The magic is in changing your reaction to it, right? So mustering up some of that patience and empathy, taking that deep breath, and simply answering the question. Again, remembering that to them, this is the first time that they've asked the question. if you are at your breaking point, it's like, if I hear that one more time, this is a very real place that people reach, and this is why you cannot be one-on-one providing care to a person with memory impairment 24/7. You just can't do it. Neither of you are going to come out well at the end of that journey. You have to have a break, right? So this is the signal. If you've reached the point where you simply know you can't react with kindness, with patience to that question, then this means that you need a break. You need some respite. So we can help you with that. If you don't have that built into your life already, a neighbor who can come over and hang out for an hour while you go for a walk, we will help you build that into your life. There are resources out there for that. There are some times, though, that we can identify, is there something that causes the person to start asking this question? If you can remove the trigger, if you will, right, the photograph on the wall in the hallway, that every time they come out of the bathroom, they see that picture and it reminds them to ask about that person or ask that question. If you can figure out what's behind it, or what that question, if there's an emotional need behind it, they're asking it because they feel anxious. They're aware that they can't manage their own time or their own schedule anymore. If you can get to what is the emotion behind this question rather than the actual words that they're saying, if you can figure that out and address it, maybe putting a calendar on the person's wall that every day tells them what's going to happen that day, that may be helpful. It's not a strategy that works for everyone, but if that's the reason that they keep asking, is that they're ruminating about what's going to happen today, what's on my calendar, then maybe you can help them feel more in control of their situation to stop the question from happening in the first place. That ideally, right? Give us a call. If you want to talk through the situation, we might be able to help you figure out what's behind the question. But if we can't stop the question, unfortunately, the only answer is addressing our own response to it. And that is take a deep breath and answer it again.
Thank you, Amy. The next question, and there was a prior one that asked about sharing this information, and yes, you will get a recording of this webinar along with the slides so that you have that and the handout that Amy has provided. So we'll make sure you have all of that information to share with whoever in your family or in your life could benefit from the extra support as well.
That's super important too, right? If you learn all this and you're like, oh, this is so great, but then no one else in the family knows it or is supporting you in doing it, then it's sometimes kind of feels like a lost cause. So yeah, that's great. Please feel free to share widely.
Yes, and so this question is kind of in line with that. This person joined this webinar, and it sounds like because her mom is caring for her dad, and her mom is having a hard time understanding how her communication directly affects his mood. So yes, they end up fighting a lot. She's tried to give her resources like books and support groups and classes, but she doesn't think she has a problem. And it sounds like she's doing and saying all the things that she should not be saying to him per what you've talked about. So any suggestions on how to have her mom access resources too?
This may not be a reasonable, depending on the logistics of your family, but my first line of advice is always to try to model this for her, right? Again, I don't know that you have the ability to be there and do that, but to show the person that if instead of standing over him and yelling at him to finish his lunch, right, and commanding orders, instead you sit down together and model. Let's do this thing together, right? Let's eat our meal together, and you model some of these more effective communication techniques, giving them one step at a time, right? Not overwhelming them with the whole meal all at once, but maybe just putting one thing on the plate. If she can actually see that in action and see him respond to that in a positive way, she may be able to learn from some of that. And then, then you can say, I learned to do that by doing some reading, by attending some classes. Can I share some information with you? So giving her little opportunities to see and experience what successful communication looks like. Maybe that's not through you. If this is a long distance relationship, is there a neighbor that you can engage, right? To come over and engage in some of these more effective communication techniques and let her see that, and use that as an opportunity to open up a conversation. That might be helpful. I think often people just need the experience of, I know this is hard. I know that like you're doing your absolute best, and all your normal ways of communicating with him that have always been very effective just don't work. It's not a failure on your part. It's because he's got disease in his brain. We have to do this differently than we used to, and that's hard. So engaging in that validation with her, right? Like I said, these techniques work on everybody, right? So just saying, I know this is so hard, but there are ways, there are better ways of doing this, and we can learn them together.
Sounds good. Okay, it looks like we're almost at the end of questions. So this one is regarding this person's mother, who believes that she has done something to her cell phone that is preventing her from connecting with friends and family. So the daughter has tried to show her that she can call, but she just received another FaceTime call from her with more accusations. So what is the best way to handle that situation?
Oh, I see. So the person with dementia thinks that the caregiver has done something to sort of sabotage her equipment. Is that
Yes,
what I'm understanding?
preventing her from connecting with friends and family.
Yes. Well, this is a hard pill to swallow. A hard pill to swallow. But when I talk about agreeing with the person, right, validating what they think is going on, I don't necessarily think it's a great idea to say, yes, I tinkered with your equipment so that you couldn't, I don't mean that kind of agreement. But saying something like, I might have messed something up, right? That feels very vulnerable, and we don't want to do it because we didn't do anything wrong, and you didn't. But again, being kind may be more effective here than being honest. Saying something like, I was messing around with those settings yesterday, and I might have messed something up. Let me see if I can fix it. Right? It may be that technology is not going to be something that she's going to be able to use. There's that part of this question, right? Do we need to get a different type of technology in there? There's that, and that question I cannot answer. But I would say, instead of trying to convince her, right, it's very natural to want to defend yourself. Of course I wouldn't do that. I want you to talk to your friends. But just sort of apologizing for your little piece of it, even if it's not really your responsibility, you didn't have anything to do with that, can go a long way. Let me see what I can do to help, right? That she may still struggle with the technology, but she may be less angry and less, she may not target you so much with the anger around that.
Very good. And then the last question. So this person's mother is having a hard time completing her sentences since she's not able to find the words to communicate. So she usually takes the time to ask her questions to find out what she is trying to tell her. As she progresses in her dementia, does this just get worse, is the question?
Usually, I mean, not always, but generally speaking, no two people are going to have the exact same experience through the progression of any type of dementia, right? Two people with Alzheimer's disease, it won't look the same. So it's hard to say. Some people's, their language abilities will sort of level off over time and not really get worse. Most people, though, we can anticipate more and more decline. What that usually looks like is less and less talking. What some people end up doing is sort of moving into jumbling their words a little bit more, using words, but just sort of stringing them together in ways that are harder to understand, don't really make sense. Some people do that. We refer to that as like a word salad, right? It just gets, and that's very hard for a care partner to kind of try to track and follow along and respond to. Most people, though, what's going to happen is they're just going to start getting quieter. There'll be more and more gaps in the conversation, more trailing off, more of that difficulty with finding the right word, finishing the rest of the sentence, and just doing what you can. I'd say something that is really helpful for a lot of people is to ask the question, is it helpful to you when I try to fill in the blanks, right? Do you want me to try to guess what you're trying to say? Some people really appreciate it and it feels like a huge relief. Some people hate it because they feel like they're being talked over. So if you can, maybe engage in a conversation now about how they want you to react in those situations. But I would say generally it's probably going the solution. Unfortunately, it's not really a solution. It's just sort of learning to be a little more comfortable with stuff not getting said, right? Trying to guess around the edges, relying on those nonverbal ways of communicating, right? Is there a gesture? Is there something she can point at? Is there some other way that they might be able to communicate this thought or this feeling to you? But do be aware, if words are failing, it may come out in the form of a behavior, right? So that would not be unexpected.
Thank you. I think that's all of the questions at this point. So thank you so much, Amy, for all of that helpful tips. It sounds like from the responses from people who you just gave responses to, they were appreciative of that information, and you gave them some helpful suggestions. So, so hopefully that will improve. As we just wrap up, I wanted to share, and I will send this in the follow-up email as well, that the Caregiver Coalition of San Diego is holding a virtual caregiving conference on December 2nd. And so I will share that so that you can have all of the details on how to register if you're interested. But the topic is going to be caregiving in the holidays and from stress to success. So just trying to make sure that we're offering support to caregivers as we approach the holidays, which can often bring some other challenges too.
Yes.
And then if anybody has any questions or if you forgot some information that we talked about today and you want to know where to find it, please reach out. I am always happy to connect you with Amy and with Alzheimer's San Diego so that you can get your the information that you're looking for. But I will also share a copy of the slides as well as the recording of this webinar so that you have that in addition to the handout. So hopefully that will be helpful for you, and you can share them with your family members again as well. So thank you, Amy, again for all of your time and
pleasure.
Sharing your expertise, and I really appreciate it, and we'll definitely be in touch. But anybody who has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out after. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for organizing this, and thanks everyone for coming.